Hello. Today's episode will take us deep into the pickle jar. We will understand what is happening and its relationship to us as humans, and how the pickle itself is a symbol of the two most important processes that life depends on in its various forms. Pickling depends on a basic component, which is salt. Once we put the vegetables in the jar, add the flavors and pour the salty water over them, two processes begin at the same time. The two processes are osmosis, in which water moves from a lower salt concentration to a higher salt concentration, and diffusion, in which salt moves from a higher salt concentration to a lower salt concentration. We start with osmosis. The salt concentration inside the vegetable is much lower than the salt concentration in the surrounding water. So the water begins to come out of the vegetable, which is what we call osmosis. It is the movement of water from a low salt concentration to a high salt concentration. The water coming out of the vegetable has the flavor of the vegetable. At the same time, the diffusion property begins to be activated. So the opposite happens. The salty water moves from a high salt concentration to a low salt concentration. The salt water that enters the vegetables to replace the water that the vegetables lost will be loaded with the flavors that we added, and the salt that enters will settle in the cell walls, preserving their hardness. That's why the pickles stay crunchy and fresh from year to year. Osmosis and diffusion continue to work constantly until there is an equal concentration of salt between the outside and inside of the vegetables. The same technique that happens in pickles happens in our body every second. Because red blood cells depend mainly on osmosis and diffusion to perform their functions. Red blood cells are concave on both sides, which increases their surface area, and at the same time their wall is thin and permeable, so it can allow oxygen to be absorbed from the lungs and distributed to the various organs of the body. When red blood cells reach the lungs, oxygen begins to diffuse inside them. Then they head to the heart to be pumped from the left side of the heart into the veins, and from there to the whole body. As blood passes through the various organs of the body by osmosis, oxygen exits from the red blood cells to the cells that contain less oxygen. At the same time, by diffusion, carbon dioxide produced by these cells enters the red blood cells to replace the lost oxygen, to head through the veins to the right side of the heart, to be pumped back into the lungs. Inside the air sacs in the lungs, carbon dioxide exits by osmosis from the red blood cells to be replaced by oxygen by diffusion. Oxygen enters the red blood cells from the lungs by diffusion. Then it exits from the red blood cells to the various organs of the body by osmosis. The same thing applies to carbon dioxide. It moves from the various organs of the body to the red blood cells by diffusion. Then it exits from the red blood cells to the air sacs in the lungs by osmosis. Without the properties of osmosis and diffusion, the organs of the body would not be able to perform their vital functions because the red blood cells are unable to supply them with the oxygen required to manufacture energy or purify them from the carbon dioxide they produce. In the two previous examples, diffusion is the driver for the entry of oxygen and carbon dioxide into the red blood cells, and salt into the vegetables, while osmosis was responsible for the exit of oxygen and carbon dioxide outside the red blood cells, and the exit of water from the vegetables. The summary is that entry is by diffusion and moving from higher concentration to lower. The exit is by osmosis and moving from lower concentration to higher. Osmosis and diffusion are also essential for plant life. We see plants use both properties through the roots to grow and survive. You can see and touch osmosis when you put your hand in water for a long time and the skin starts to shrink. The skin loses some of the water inside it. Every time you eat pickles, remember the magnificence of the Creator in making two properties, such as osmosis and diffusion, the reason for your ability to taste and chew it, and for your being alive. I hope you liked today's topic. Waiting for your opinions in the comments. See you soon.